a certain level of relaxation and sleep occurs, then the solar plexus chakra, there's an electric shock and the whole body collapses and jolts, and it can get like really violent, and I wake up every time, and it of course pulls me out of that deep relaxation. So I haven't so far been able to go beyond that threshold. If that weren't happening, I would be in that spiral, in that vortex that would go towards the Planck threshold, bring me into the next layer of relaxation. And there's something there that doesn't allow that. There's this block. I'm sensing it is an implant, and today it was another confirmation because it doesn't feel like an organic block. It feels like it's artificial. Before that happened, and I was starting to relax so deeply that I was starting to spin. This is another phenomenon. When the relaxation gets to a certain point, I start spinning, and the spin is always different. I'm being spun. I love it because it's the most wonderful feeling. It's a feeling of bliss. This is a greater force, so it's like all of a sudden I am part of like the big clockwork, but it's not clock, it's not a mechanism, it's an anatomy, it's a living anatomy. I'm part of a bigger body, and it is taking me now and spinning me. It's that torus field. It begins slowly to accelerate. It's like it has this organic rhythm. The faster it starts to go, even more bliss, even more relaxation. And in the past, when I would spin, sometimes I would get past a threshold, and I would be able, and then I would like roll out of my body, completely awake and out of my body, and that's like the most amazing feeling. Then I could, float around, and it's real. When the bliss happens, you are completely open and surrendered. At the same time, you're so open, then you feel extremely vulnerable, and you feel it so much. Coming from a device, a frequency, like it was translated into the images in my dream, discombobulated sounds and pictures were coming through it, and the phone was like morphing. I picked it up because I wanted to turn it off, and then there was even more connection with that device. That frequency captured my whole entire body, my aura, violently, and with this evil horror feeling. It squeezed it tight. It takes away the powers of a being, which is the powers is your connection to your soul. Electric force field, pulling force. The life is being sucked out of you. It was binding me. What was surrender before, now you're faint. You have no power. When the bliss is there, you are completely surrendered, but you are also the spin. So it's like you and the spin are one. The spin doesn't have power over you. This was another level. I managed to pull myself out of it. I called in help while I was still feeling it. And then I knew, don't be afraid of your fear. And I was then already getting, so now you got to know it more. Confirmed, yes, it is a device. So it's an implant. And there's so much gold in here. Instead of just pushing it away as a very unpleasant situation, or seeing it purely as a burden that you wish to get rid of, surf more in the energies of, I don't know how. That's a whole other situation of being with it. If you ride those waves, you will have a completely different experience. The implant that John Whitberg shared about from the SSP programs said that the way that they create altars is not anymore in the way that he experienced it in the programs, but through an implant in the brain. So this is a device that creates altars, and altars is the split off soul aspect, soul fragment through trauma, because the bliss is the releasing of the tension and the nervous system cooling off. The natural spin of your being can find the rhythm, in rhythm with your soul. You becoming one with your soul, because even though every time it was the same feeling with the device, that time you did feel an entity, and the entity came on top of it. The device made you powerless, and so that the entity could slip in completely into your body, as if they were merging, and your feelings were the entity's feelings, and the entity was absolutely lustful and wanted this with you. And so for seconds it was like as if it was you that felt that way. And then you came to and like, I don't want this. And then you were able to wake yourself up again as you recognized, yes, this is teaching that comes from your own soul. It is about surrendering to this fear and surrendering to the awful feelings, never to the other being. And that is the opposite, actually, even though the mind suggests that, no, I can't do that because that's surrender to the being. It's going to have its way with me. You have to switch it around. It seems like counterintuitive. What really is that the surrender to the horror that we're feeling, is the surrender to our own fear, is what brings us back, brings the light and the life back into our bodies. But when we allow ourselves to feel that awful feeling, you will wake yourself up. It is coming from the dark side, and at the same time it is your initiation. It's another training. You're not like in resistance to them anymore. You don't receive the device, you don't receive the attack, you receive what your body feels. And as you receive your own energy, you inhabit yourself. The fear is that which inverts it and makes it palatable for the harvesters, parasites. So then you've experienced in your own body, to a degree that you haven't had before, how this entity was then able to slip into you like an imposter. For seconds, you were it, thinking and feeling, and the inner voice, you were saying things that you didn't want. You were able to say no, even though it was very croaky because it was so difficult to bring this out. But you were able to pull that I am energy through the heart because there was no judgment about any of it. There was no feeling towards the entity, no anger. Also, the only feeling there had been fear, that physical sensation of it, but there were no emotions involved. There was no thought or emotion of victimhood, and that's key. It is like a muscle. When this happens, this onslaught of fear, to stay aware enough to be open to your fear and feel it. That's then your liberation, and they go. If you're able to pull it into your throat through the heart, because there's no judgment and because there's no victim consciousness, you find your voice to just say no. This is also a way eventually to neutralize this implant. And it's also an incredible training. It's almost like if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere, because the implants are there to keep you from embodying more and more of your soul, becoming very aware, and then at some point you're completely immune to that world, to those frequencies, and so they cannot feed anymore. Your more powerful vortex, Taurus, to uplift the whole entire field, making that a bit more available to connect with their souls. This is pulling the rug underneath the whole entire inverted matrix and all the parasitical beings. When there is awareness and knowing of self, which entails being able to bring that knowing into the root chakra, into the physical body, then it has no more power. Then it's useless. How can it keep itself there? There's the liver on the one side and the spleen on the other side, and they're the two organs connected into the solar plexus. So what we call parasites in the body, where they like to gather the most, is around apparently the spleen. Solar plexus is I am, and it's the true I am. And after I woke up then the third time, the image came to me, a floating baby, not physical. It was in a womb. This womb then had portal umbilical cord that was connected into my solar plexus. And I knew you are in the process of getting ready to birth your child. Solar Christ child is also the chrism oil that is produced in the solar plexus through the spinal fluid, the milk and the honey in the two parts of the brain, pineal and pituitary. One is the feminine principle, right brain, and one the masculine principle, left brain. And one is the honey and one is the milk. And the feminine is called Mary and the masculine is called Joseph. And as Mary and Joseph, these two liquids that are white and gold, like the Ida and the Pingala, even though Ida and Pingala are gold and silver, but silver and milk is also, the moon is also associated with silver and with milk. white, and the sun is golden. Yeah, so it's the sun, moon, feminine, masculine principle energy. And just like the Ida Pingala, Kundalini, the dragon line, the dragon, solar dragon consciousness entails the life force of the body. It begins to rise from the root chakra, and this is the same thing with the chrism oil. So as the Mary and Joseph flow into the solar plexus, they make love, and the chrism oil, Christ child, so this is the third energy of that hierogamic union. Why is it the hierogamic union? Because it's fractal universe, so masculine and feminine is within the two sides of the brain. This is the whole principle throughout all of it. It's because the one are two and they are three. Within each, if they within themselves have fulfilled hierogamic union within the two hemispheres of the brain, then not only what appears, what they become aware of, but also what they weave through themselves is the Shushumna. This is the central column of light where the caduceus of the Ida Pingala, first snake energy, and becomes dragon energy as it rises up. They interweave like an 8 in the spiral in opposite direction through the column of light. The column of light is that third neutral energy. It's the 0 point of each chakra where the two pine cones kiss, going into that Planck threshold, and then it goes into that 0 point that is the portal into the quantum field where everything is a potential, neutral, suspended in stillness. That's where everything is one. The sense is you are one with your soul. And the more this neutral energy can be brought through the masculine, the feminine, that doesn't mean that become neutral as well. No. Also doesn't mean that the individuality and all the fractality that we have gathered as a personality of soul, all that makes us unique, fades out in the light. It's the opposite. It's because the neutrality comes in that the individuality can find its peak expression, because it's unobstructed, because what the quantum field is in this stillness is, in this oneness feeling, is no divide, and therefore also no fear can stand in that field. It's impossible. Peak performance of the physical body is the consequence in the solar plexus. The milk and the honey make a completely new liquid, chrism oil. It travels all the way down the spine to the very, very tip. And just the other day, you felt the tip of your spine ever so subtle. There was a tingling there that you hadn't experienced before. And then came the notion, aha, with how the dragon is the head, the wings, the tail, and then the arms and the legs. And this little green came through, a little green dragon who was called Kiwi. The theme that Kiwi brought forth was about communion with family. Little Green, Joni Mitchell's song, is about her having a baby and having to give it up for adoption. So losing a child, there's that split, there's that division, and the sadness and the trauma. What Kiwi also brought forth was that if in this time, because on the one hand there are the timelines converging, and on the other hand there's also this a rift that is splitting apart, and that we might not have connection anymore with people that we're very close to, as we are getting in touch with our souls and more into our individuality, and we don't fit the system anymore, not adapt anymore into the ways that we were conditioned into, and for some, where to put you anymore. Where's the common ground? It's like they're losing touch with you. When there is genuine love, it doesn't happen in the heart. That stays. The life paths and the lessons to be learned, they become so different. And because this time is so important to go within, to face yourself, in order to weed out who you are not. Just like the shadow being that was in your body, that part that is being had is the asleep part. This is why it could happen. And it took few seconds to come to, and in those few seconds you experienced how it can be that you are completely taken over by a dark force, and how there is like seemingly this is who you are. Everywhere where there is unconsciousness, The device can only stay there in a pocket where you do not inhabit yourself yet. In this relationship, in this dynamic, you are not completely free to be yourself, because that's where still the conditioning is having the better of you. And this conditioning is based on fear, and where there is fear, there is siphoning off, there is an inversion of the energy. There's like a hole in the aura. And trauma can also be like a belief system. You cannot make it through into the higher realm with even this most subtle sliver of fear. So what the device is actually doing is bringing your attention to it. And what we were guiding you to do about this jolting and the electroshocks was feel into it. Instead of going into any kind of victim consciousness, completely receive the situation as it is, to focus into exactly where it hurts the most. You're losing I am into a false self that is still a small self, that is still in a certain posture, thinking it has to be in a certain way to feel safe, to feel comfortable. It's part of your old survival mechanism. You don't need that anymore to survive. If you were not to give this any attention and you hold on to this, not only will this continue, but it will get louder. And whatever's triggering it, and if this is the behavior of another person, it has to continue. You're also holding on to that. They cannot change in relation to you either until you owned this part of yourself that is stuck in a fearful dream. You have to bring that back home to you, into the safety of your true being. Pay attention when it feels bad and sit with that bad feeling. Not in the story, be in the judgment of the other that is triggering this feeling, but welcoming this, like, oh, there you are, darling, I'm with you now. The same process like with the psychic attack. But consciousness cannot truly be divided, which is why only consciousness can bring itself back, the parts of it that is not conscious, and wake itself up. As that part of you comes back in, it then becomes you, and you are the one that is aware. And then your awareness even grows through that experience, and that is the expansion. Dots connecting. The session I did with Kiwi, that dragon group living in a mountain, and there was a birth happening, and they were all celebrating this birth. And Kiwi said, when this split happens, split in the timelines, where there's a split between communities and in families also, a longing to be in a harmonious community. And that's our nature. But in this inverted matrix, it's so difficult because they've done everything to divide us. And also, we're divided within ourselves. And if we do not have harmony within ourselves, and that means this holy matrimony, be able to bring through our soul, take on our soul's perspective. It's only about the conditionings that are not in harmony with our soul. As long as there is identity with those, there's going to be conflict. That which is within harmony will reflect on the outside, and so those that are no longer in resonance with our harmony, this then also can cause a division. If it is not the relationship based in the heart and can find a new way of being, without that, this one has to change. Because for the one that has dissolved the false self and retrieved that aspect of itself, there's an unconditional love. It can allow the other one to be. And Kiwi said, you can call upon me. I will help you find your spirit family. I called her in, and she came. She touched me on my forehead like this, and then I felt a ridge. I saw it and I felt it. So the image was given to me, the ridge that the dragons have. My whole back was turning into like a dragon back. The scales, and they were all standing up. When you stretch it all out, and so that every fine little fern can have space, was this ridge, and then it went all the way to the tailbone. Our DNA, the original blueprint, is the double diamond sun DNA. It's also called the angelic human DNA. When this is fully expressed in the Christ consciousness field, which is the 12th dimension, and that is the highest form-giving dimension of our universe. And so this is where the highest self resides. That's the field where the cosmic solar dragons come from. We were made in the image, And then the message from Magenta Pixie, from the white-winged collective of 9, what they said about the dragons, that it is the Kundalini energy within us, and that is the life force. This dragon energy of the cosmic solar dragons, it's part of our makeup, part of our consciousness. And the dragons are the oldest form in the universe, fractals within us. When the human angelic DNA is at a certain point, what begins is, and this is also what Rion de Rouen speaks about, that he can feel that part of himself is the wings. And you can also see it energetically. We have the crown, when this higher anatomy has come online, when a certain expression of an inhabitation of light in our bodies has happened, then there's like a halo. Also the horns, they're called ventricle horns, and it's actually simply light coming out of the ventricle. This is why he's depicted later with horns. So energetically, when this was happening in the tailbone, this is your dragon's tail coming alive. Aha! That came later, that I was feeling a tingling in the tailbone. So the ridge went down and it stopped exactly in the solar plexus area, which is the middle. The heart is not in the middle. The heart is what is connected to the sun in the inner earth, 8 Genesis cells, and where the quantum of light of the soul resides. It's the home. And the middle connects heaven and earth, is the solar plexus, and all the chakras are a representation of the solar system, and the sun is the solar plexus. And this is where there was like a belt, like a ring around me, and so there was a block, so it couldn't continue into the small of the back and the tail. I asked Kiwi, is there any way you can help me with this? Oh, and by the way, I would really like to be more aware. Like, I witnessed Jenna had channeled Kiwi. I could tell she is really making this connection with these dragons, and these dragons are real. It just touched me so much. I was sobbing. I was on my bike and I was sobbing because I was listening to it. What I would really love if my third eye could be opened, her transmission was, when you don't see anything or you only see black, the images that come are very, very faint, and then perhaps you have the feeling that, okay, you got the idea, you got the faint image, and then the mind fleshes out the rest, and you want to make sure that none of it is make-believe, none of it is coming from because you want to see something, but that these are original, authentic images given to you. Weed out that little bit of insecurity there. And she says, rest in the not seeing. Celebrate the darkness. Don't want anything more than already is. Listen to it even when it doesn't sing. Hold that space for that nothingness. Be open. Don't judge it as not good enough. It's like, it's okay not to remember, so you don't remember. You accept that you don't. You receive the nothingness. And then it just came back to me. So I was moved by her to hold out my hands like this, and she put her paws over my hands. We were holding hands like this, and in the middle there was a chi ball that was being created, a ball of light. Now bring both hands, and that's again Ida Pingala, together, so the chi balls become one, the two are one, and bring them into the solar plexus, and they are 3. And then that chi ball turned into this bigger spinning torus field. The streamlines of the torus, they were made out of the light language of dragons, so dragon light language. And this is how the dragons are also the fire letters, which are the codons, the chelons in our DNA, chelons or key ions. I switched on key. What are the fire letters? This is where our alphabet comes from, so-called Ophanim alphabet. In a torus, that is our heart, it's the chalice, it's the Holy Grail. So it's the heart chakra, and it's depending on from which angle you look at it. And here we have where the spinning comes in again. When I feel myself spinning, I'm already relaxed to such a point. My physical body has come to such a harmony that it can inhabit a greater array, which means inhabit my aura, become aware of myself as more energetic, so as like my soul. I start to spin at a certain angle. The spin was never the same. There's a certain anatomy to this spin of the heart chakra the energy going through that creates a shadow. Depending on what angle you look at this torus with the energy going through it from, you get a letter, you get a shape. That is called fire letter. Double diamond DNA with the fire letters, it's crystalline DNA. How the DNA turns over evolution in ascension, which means also descension of the higher consciousness into the lower embodiment. They become one in consciousness. And that's how we can become one with our oversoul. That's the soul collective, and the other souls that are in our collective that are also us. And we connect through that 0 point where we feel the oneness. That night after that session, the dragons were with me the whole time, not just one. There were many dragons. No matter how it comes, whether it comes through another healer, that I do a session, or whichever way, that the process of healing is not anymore, this is terrible, I got to get rid of this. But that it's actually like, wow, let's see what I can learn from this. This is here for a reason. Everything that shows up, everything that we need to also heal is going to make us greater. It's like pulling forth more of ourselves. Ultimately, we always heal ourselves. Healing is never forced, because healing comes from within. Breathe in the pain, breathe out the love. Or the shaman eating the pain of the tornado. That's how it calms the pain of the tornado, being that its fractality has been cut by the defractalizing frequencies at like steel 90-degree angles. It's not fractals that will actually hurt the torus field of that being. So a tornado is actually the anger of what we call nature spirit. The divide also happening for a reason that the old structures have to be broken. Just like the old financial system, for example, it has to completely collapse, or the political system has to completely collapse. It doesn't work anymore with the higher frequencies and the higher consciousness coming in. Like our devices don't work in inner earth. Even the old cameras that were non-digital, they wouldn't even work in inner earth to make way for the new structures to come. And this is why also the old relationships, you're having this dynamic that is still coming from the conditioning that was imprinted into us in our growing up. It's coming from the pain body, projecting the shadows onto each other. Conflict is part of that old relationship. As we are ascending, this conflict potential is coming to the surface very loud, because it needs to come into harmony. It needs to come into holy, into sacred geometry. And this is the fractality. The energy that is being given to the old system has to stop. Also the relationships, the old dynamic that it has been flowing in, it has to stop. And there has to be this time to go within, so that the new, which is your true self, or a system that is more aligned with the new field, it's not inverted anymore, it's not broken anymore, way more harmony, there's way more consciousness, there's way more light. So that has to be served, reflecting the collective. It cannot be like built on top of the old. The base code is completely different. I can't be that old person anymore that will feed into this. So to stop that, we have to take ourselves out of the equation, and so that we can stop projecting our shadow. We have to reintegrate our shadow. Then the relationship can evolve to a lighter, harmonious version of itself. There is that possibility that when there's no more platform to stand on, this etheric implant, then I will inhabit that part of me. The immune system, that flow is just going to kick it out, just like parasites, same way. Will detox it. They cannot live in the light. It has no more power to hold itself in place. We can do this on our own.